When a high school science project becomes the battleground for underlying prejudice, a brilliant young mind must overcome not just technical challenges, but the harsh reality of discrimination in education. What begins as one teacher's dismissal will spark a journey that changes lives far beyond the classroom walls. 16-year-old Zion Carter moved through Westridge High School's fluorescent-lit hallways with a quiet focus that set him apart. Unlike most of his peers who shuffled between classes with the disinterested gait of teenagers counting down to freedom, Zion's dark eyes remained alert, his mind constantly processing, calculating, and creating. Science wasn't just his favorite subject, it was his calling. "Did you finish the chemistry homework?" asked his friend Darius, falling into step beside him. Zion nodded. "Last night. Those electron configuration problems were actually pretty interesting." "Only you would think that." Darius laughed, shaking his head. "That's why you're going places, man." The bell rang as they entered Ms. Vivian Harlow's advanced science classroom. A tall woman with pinched features and prematurely gray hair pulled into a severe bun. Ms. Harlow had been teaching at Westridge for 15 years. Her reputation preceded her, brilliant but cold, demanding but fair. At least, that's what the school administration believed. "Settle down, everyone," Ms. Harlow said, not looking up from her laptop as students found their seats. "Today we're discussing the annual Westridge Science Innovation Fair." A buzz of excitement rippled through the classroom. The Innovation Fair was the school's most prestigious academic event, drawing attention from local universities and even industry representatives. Winning meant recognition, scholarship opportunities, and a significant advantage on college applications. "This year's theme is Sustainable Solutions for Tomorrow's World," Ms. Harlow continued, finally looking up to survey the room with cool gray eyes. "I expect exceptional work from this advanced class. Project proposals are due next Friday." Zion felt a surge of excitement. Sustainable solutions was his passion. He'd been following breakthrough research in renewable energy for years. He already had ideas bubbling up, concepts he'd sketched in the worn notebook he carried everywhere. As the class ended, students gathered around Ms. Harlow's desk to discuss potential projects. Zion waited patiently, refining his concept while others received guidance. "Ms. Harlow," he finally said when his turn came, "I've been researching a new approach to photovoltaic cells using organic polymers combined with enhanced graphene structures. The initial calculations suggest it could increase solar energy conversion efficiency by nearly 30% while reducing production costs." Ms. Harlow's expression remained impassive as she looked up at Zion. "That sounds extremely ambitious, Mr. Carter. Perhaps too ambitious for a high school project." "I've been studying this field for over 2 years," Zion explained, pulling out his notebook to show her his preliminary diagrams. "I've already done the theoretical framework." Ms. Harlow barely glanced at his notebook. "I suggest something more appropriate for your level. Perhaps a basic wind turbine design or a simple water filtration system. Those would be more manageable." Behind Zion, Silas Marsh cleared his throat impatiently. The son of a prominent local businessman and school board member, Silas wore designer clothes and an expression of perpetual entitlement. "I'll think about it," Zion said quietly, closing his notebook as Ms. Harlow immediately brightened at Silas's approach. "Silas, what are you thinking for your project?" she asked warmly. "I was considering something with solar panels," Silas said casually. "Maybe improving efficiency with some new materials." "What an excellent idea," Ms. Harlow exclaimed. "That's exactly the kind of forward-thinking approach this competition needs. I can connect you with some resources to get started." Zion paused at the door, watching the exchange with a familiar weight settling in his chest. It wasn't the first time he'd witnessed the stark difference in how Ms. Harlow treated certain students, but it never stung any less. That evening, the modest 2-bedroom apartment Zion shared with his mother smelled of chicken and spices. Nia Carter had already changed from her hospital scrubs into comfortable clothes, her hair wrapped in a colorful scarf as she prepared dinner between shifts. "How was school today?" she asked, stirring a pot of jambalaya, a recipe passed down from Zion's grandmother. "They announced the science fair," Zion said, setting the table. "It's about sustainable solutions this year." Nia's face lit up. "That's perfect for you. I know how much you care about that stuff. What's your idea?" As Zion explained his concept for the enhanced solar cells, his mother listened attentively, nodding even though the technical details were beyond her expertise. What she understood perfectly was her son's passion and his brilliance. Ms. Harlow didn't seem to think I could do it, Zion added, his voice dropping slightly. She told me to pick something simpler. Nia set down her spoon, turning to look directly at her son. Zion Alexander Carter, when have you ever done anything simple when you could do something extraordinary instead? A small smile tugged at Zion's lips. Never. That's right. And you're not starting now. She served the steaming jambalaya. So, what do you need to make this project happen? Some specialized materials. Access to proper testing equipment. Nia nodded thoughtfully. I picked up an extra shift this weekend. It won't cover everything, but it's a start. Mom, you already work too much. And you work too hard for anyone to tell you your dreams are too big. She interrupted firmly. We'll figure it out together, like we always do. Later that night, after completing his homework, Zion sat at his desk, the single lamp illuminating his notebook as he refined his project design. His mother's words echoed in his mind, drowning out Ms. Harlow's dismissal. The next day, Zion walked through the university campus with nervous anticipation. Dr. Marcus Webb had been his unofficial mentor since they'd met at a community science program 2 years ago. A former researcher at MIT, Dr. Webb now taught at the local university and occasionally made time for promising students like Zion. This is impressive work, Dr. Webb said, studying Zion's notebook in the quiet of his cluttered office. You've really developed your understanding of photovoltaic principles since we last spoke. Do you think it's too ambitious for the science fair? Zion asked, the question weighted with Ms. Harlow's dismissal. Dr. Webb's eyes narrowed slightly. Who told you that? My science teacher thinks I should do something simpler. Dr. Webb leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes teachers underestimate their students' capabilities, he said carefully. But this project is absolutely appropriate for an advanced student with your background. In fact, he added, flipping through more pages of calculations, this is borderline undergraduate research work. Relief washed over Zion. So you think I should pursue it? I think you must, Dr. Webb said firmly. And I'd be happy to provide some guidance. We even have some of the equipment you'll need in our lab. As they discussed the project further, Dr. Webb mentioned casually, I still have connections at several research institutions. People who might be very interested in what you're developing here. Zion left the university with renewed determination and a list of resources. His teacher's dismissal had stung, but between his mother's unwavering support and Dr. Webb's professional validation, he knew his path forward. The following week, Zion submitted his detailed project proposal, complete with preliminary research, material requirements, and projected outcomes. When he placed it on Ms. Harlow's desk, she barely looked up. 3 days later, project approvals were returned. Most students received specific feedback and suggestions for improvement. Zion's proposal came back with a single sentence scrawled in red ink. Concept too advanced. Choose a more appropriate project. In contrast, Silas Marsh received extensive notes and encouragement for his solar panel project, which, Zion couldn't help but notice, covered much of the same ground as his own proposal, but with far less technical depth. She can't just reject it without reason. Darius insisted when Zion showed him the response. That's your education, man. You should fight this. Zion considered his options carefully. Confrontation wasn't his natural approach, but he'd learned from his mother that sometimes you had to stand up for yourself, especially when others are determined to stand in your way. After class, he approached Ms. Harlow's desk again. I'd like to understand why my proposal was rejected, he said politely but firmly. The guidelines don't specify any limitations on the technological approach. Ms. Harlow sighed without looking up from her grading. Mr. Carter, I simply don't believe you grasp the complexity of what you're proposing. I'm saving you from inevitable failure by redirecting you to something more suitable. With all due respect, Ms. Harlow, I've been researching this topic extensively. I have mentorship from Dr. Webb at the university, and he believes the project is well within my capabilities. At the mention of Dr. Webb, Ms. Harlow's eyes finally flicked up to meet Zion's. Something unreadable passed across her face before her expression hardened. Dr. Webb is not responsible for grading your work in this class. I am. Her voice took on an edge that wasn't there before. I've made my decision. Either choose a new project by tomorrow, or you'll receive a 0 for this assignment. As Zion left the classroom, the weight in his chest had transformed into something else. Not just disappointment, but resolve. Miss Harlow had made her stance clear, but Zion was beginning to suspect this was about much more than just a science project. What he didn't know yet was just how far the ripples from this conflict would reach, or how a simple school assignment would eventually challenge not just his teacher's prejudice, but an entire system built to overlook excellence when it came in unexpected forms. The ultimatum from Ms. Harlow hung in the air like a storm cloud, threatening to wash away months of Zion's research. As he walked through the crowded hallway, he pulled out his phone and called the one person who always knew what to do when obstacles appeared. She said what? Nia Carter's voice carried a controlled fury through the phone. She can't just reject your project without valid academic reasons. She claims it's too advanced, Zion explained, finding a quiet corner near the library. But she approved Silas's project on basically the same topic. The silence on the other end told Zion his mother was processing this information the way she always did, thoughtfully and strategically. Nia Carter hadn't raised her son alone and put herself through nursing school by acting impulsively. I'm coming to speak with her, she finally said. Tomorrow after my morning shift. Mom, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted gently. We both know what's happening here, Zion. It's not the first time, and if nobody stands up, it won't be the last. The next day, Nia Carter arrived at Westridge High in her hospital scrubs, her hair neatly braided and her expression resolute. Miss Harlow's free period was just beginning when Nia knocked on the classroom door. Miss Harlow? I'm Nia Carter, Zion's mother. The teacher looked up with mild surprise. Mrs. Carter, I wasn't expecting you. I don't have any parent meetings scheduled today. It's Ms. Carter, Nia corrected politely. And this couldn't wait for a scheduled appointment. I'd like to discuss your rejection of my son's science project. Ms. Harlow's posture stiffened visibly. As I explained to Zion, his proposal is simply too ambitious for a high school student. I'm protecting him from certain disappointment. Nia took a seat across from the teacher without waiting for an invitation. My son has been working on this research for over 2 years. He has mentorship from a university professor who believes in his capabilities. What specific technical aspects of his proposal do you find beyond his ability? Ms. Harlow blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct question. The advanced polymer chemistry alone would require resources that Dr. Webb at the university has already agreed to provide. Nia finished for her. As for the theoretical framework, Zion has completed most of that already. So again, what specific aspects are too ambitious? A tense silence fell between them before Ms. Harlow replied coldly. Ms. Carter, I appreciate your concern, but I've been teaching science for 15 years. I know what's appropriate for students at this level. And I've been raising my son for 16 years, Nia countered smoothly. I know what he's capable of. I'm not asking you to change your mind because he's my son. I'm asking you to evaluate his work on its merit, just as you would any other student's. Ms. Harlow shuffled some papers on her desk. I'll take your concerns under advisement, but my decision stands. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to prepare. As Nia rose to leave, she paused at the door. You know, Miss Harlow, my son has faced people underestimating him his entire life. It's never stopped him before, and it won't stop him now. That evening, Nia found Zion hunched over his desk, surrounded by sketches and calculations. She didn't budge, did she? He asked without looking up. No, Nia admitted, sitting on the edge of his bed. But that doesn't mean we're giving up. Zion turned to face his mother. I've decided to do the project anyway. Without Ms. Harlow's approval, I'll submit something simple for her class grade. A basic water filtration system, like she suggested, Zion explained. But I'm going to continue with my real project outside of class. Dr. Webb says I can use the university lab on weekends. Nia studied her son's face, seeing the determination that reminded her so much of herself. It's going to mean a lot of extra work. I know, Zion nodded. But some things are worth fighting for. Over the next few weeks, Zion lived a double life. In Ms. Harlow's class, he dutifully worked on the approved water filtration project, simple, unoriginal, and far below his capabilities. But evenings and weekends were dedicated to his true passion. The university lab became his sanctuary. Under Dr. Webb's guidance, Zion refined his polymer designs and began constructing the first prototype of his enhanced photovoltaic cell. Each test brought new challenges and unexpected complications. The electron transfer rate is still too slow, Zion muttered, studying the latest test results on a Saturday afternoon. Dr. Webb peered over his shoulder. What if you modified the graphene structure here? He pointed to Zion's diagram. A hexagonal arrangement might improve conductivity. While Zion worked through these technical challenges, another drama was unfolding at Westridge High. Principal Eleanor Frost called an emergency faculty meeting to discuss budget allocations for the upcoming term. Due to funding constraints, we need to prioritize, Principal Frost announced to the assembled teachers. The board has suggested reducing support for some academic programs to maintain our athletics funding. Ms. Harlow immediately raised her hand. Surely the science department shouldn't face cuts when we have students competing in the innovation fair. That event brings recognition to the school. Speaking of which, interjected Coach Blackwell, I understand Silas Marsh has an excellent project this year. His father mentioned it at the last board meeting. Principal Frost nodded. Yes, Mr. Marsh was quite enthusiastic about showcasing his son's work to the university representatives. I believe several board members have already been invited to preview it. The significance of this exchange wasn't lost on younger teacher Ms. Loretta Kemp, who had witnessed Ms. Harlow's dismissal of Zion's project. After the meeting, she approached Ms. Harlow in the hallway. I couldn't help but notice you rejected Zion Carter's proposal on solar technology while approving a similar project from Silas Marsh, Ms. Kemp said cautiously. Ms. Harlow's expression hardened. Zion's proposal was unrealistic. Silas presented a practical approach. I've had Zion in my English class for 2 years, Ms. Kemp persisted. His analytical abilities are exceptional. Perhaps you should reconsider. I don't tell you how to teach literature, Ms. Kemp. Harlow cut her off coldly. Please don't presume to advise me on science education. As Ms. Kemp walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamentally unjust was happening, something larger than just one student's project. 3 weeks before the innovation fair, Zion experienced a breakthrough. After dozens of failed attempts and redesigns, his modified photovoltaic cell produced an energy conversion rate that exceeded even his initial projections. This is remarkable, Dr. Webb said, examining the data. The efficiency increase is closer to 40% than your projected 30%. Zion's face lit up with genuine joy, the kind that comes from solving a problem everyone else thought impossible. The hexagonal graphene structure was the key, he explained excitedly. It creates a more efficient electron pathway than conventional designs. Dr. Webb studied the young man before him, noting the dark circles under his eyes from late nights of work, the ink-stained fingers from countless calculations, and the unwavering determination that had carried him through weeks of setbacks. Making a decision, Dr. Webb picked up his phone. Zion, I need to make a quick call. Why don't you start documenting these results? Stepping into his office, Dr. Webb dialed a number he hadn't used in years. Professor Rivera? Marcus Webb here. I have someone you need to know about. The day of the Westridge Science Innovation Fair arrived with all the anticipated fanfare. Local news cameras captured the school's exterior as university representatives and industry scouts filed into the gymnasium, which had been transformed with rows of project displays. Silas Marsh's elaborately designed booth dominated the center of the room, complete with professional graphics and a polished presentation that screamed of parental involvement. School board members clustered around it admiringly, while Ms. Harlow beamed with pride. In a far corner, Zion stood beside his simple water filtration system, explaining the basic principles to a disinterested judge. His real project, the breakthrough that had consumed his life for months, remained hidden away, unshared and unrecognized. As the judging concluded, Ms. Harlow took the stage with Principal Frost. We've seen remarkable work today, she announced, smiling at the audience. Our judges have made their decisions. To no one's surprise, Silas Marsh was awarded first place. As he accepted the trophy and scholarship check, his father placed a congratulatory hand on Principal Frost's shoulder, a gesture not lost on the watching students. Zion received an honorable mention, a token acknowledgement that felt more like an afterthought than recognition. As the crowd dispersed, he packed up his display with quiet dignity. I saw your real project, Ms. Kemp said softly, approaching his table. Dr. Webb showed me the data last week. What happened here today wasn't right, Zion. Zion managed a small smile. Thank you for saying so, Ms. Kemp. What neither of them knew was that at that very moment, in an office 300 miles away, Professor Jasmine Rivera was reviewing a detailed submission to the National Young Innovators Competition, a submission featuring Zion's revolutionary photovoltaic design, complete with test results and verification from Dr. Marcus Webb. The letter that would change everything was already in the mail, addressed to Zion Carter at his home address, deliberately bypassing Westridge High School entirely. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, its official embossed seal gleaming under the hallway light as Zion collected the mail. His hands trembled slightly as he read the opening paragraph. Dear Mr. Carter, congratulations. Your project, Enhanced Organic Polymer Photovoltaic Cells with Modified Graphene Structures, has been selected as a finalist in the National Young Innovators Competition. Zion read the words 3 times before their meaning fully registered. The National Young Innovators Competition wasn't just prestigious, it was life-changing. Previous winners had received full scholarships to elite universities, patents for their inventions, and even startup funding. Mom, he called out, his voice cracking with emotion. Mom, you need to see this. Nia emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. When she read the letter, tears welled in her eyes. Zion, she whispered, pulling him into a tight embrace. I always knew your brilliance would be recognized. Always. That evening was a celebration. Dr. Webb joined them for dinner, finally revealing his role in submitting Zion's work to the national competition. You deserved a fair evaluation, Dr. Webb explained. Something you weren't getting at Westridge. The competition is in 2 weeks, Zion noted, reading through the detailed information. I'll need to prepare a presentation and bring my working prototype. And you'll need to miss 3 days of school, Nia added. I'll request the time off work to accompany you. None of them anticipated the obstacle that would appear the very next morning. Absolutely not, Principal Frost declared, shaking her head firmly as Zion and his mother sat across from her desk. School policy clearly states that students may only participate in external competitions if they are representing Westridge as official delegates. Since Zion's project wasn't our school's Innovation Fair winner, he cannot attend. But this is a national competition, Nia argued. This opportunity could determine my son's entire future. Rules are rules, Ms. Carter. Perhaps Zion should have focused more on the school competition instead of pursuing outside projects. The principal's office door opened, and Ms. Harlow entered without knocking. I heard Zion received an invitation to the national competition, she said, her voice tight. I must object to this in the strongest possible terms. You've already made your objection clear, Principal Frost replied. I was just explaining to Ms. Carter that Zion cannot attend as a Westridge representative. It's more serious than that, Ms. Harlow continued, her cheeks flushed. The project Zion submitted was not approved by me. This constitutes academic dishonesty and should result in disciplinary action, not rewards. Zion, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. The school didn't submit my project, Dr. Webb did, and I completed it entirely on my own time, using university resources. Using research you began in my class, Ms. Harlow countered. Principal Frost, if we allow this, what message does it send to other students? That they can circumvent teacher authority whenever they disagree with our judgment. The tension in the room was palpable when a knock interrupted them. Ms. Kemp stood in the doorway, a folder tucked under her arm. Excuse me, I couldn't help overhearing, she said. Principal Frost, before you make your decision, there's something you should see. Ms. Kemp placed the folder on the desk and opened it to reveal printouts from several scientific journals. I did some research after the Innovation Fair. These are published articles on photovoltaic technology from the past decade. This one, she pointed to a highlighted section, was written by Professor Vivian Harlow during her doctoral studies at Stanford. Ms. Harlow's face drained of color as Principal Frost examined the document. And this, Ms. Kemp continued, revealing another paper, is a rejection letter from the Journal of Renewable Energy, citing fundamental flaws in Professor Harlow's proposed solar energy conversion method, a method remarkably similar to what Silas Marsh presented at our fair. This is irrelevant, Ms. Harlow sputtered. My academic history has nothing to do with. And finally, Ms. Kemp pressed on. This is Dr. Marcus Webb's groundbreaking paper that contradicted Professor Harlow's theories and eventually led to his recognition in the field while her career in research stalled. The room fell silent as the pieces clicked into place. Ms. Harlow hadn't just dismissed Zion's project. She had recognized its potential to succeed where her own work had failed, and its connection to the man whose research had overshadowed hers. Principal Frost removed her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. Ms. Harlow, we'll discuss this privately later. Ms. Carter, Zion may attend the competition, though not as an official school representative. That's my final decision. The National Young Innovators Competition occupied an entire convention center in Chicago. Hundreds of brilliant young minds from across the country presented projects that pushed the boundaries of science and technology. Among them stood Zion Carter, his carefully constructed prototype drawing consistent crowds. "Your approach to the electron transfer pathway is fascinating," commented one judge, a renowned physicist from MIT. "What inspired this particular configuration?" "Necessity, actually," Zion explained with newfound confidence. "Traditional pathways created efficiency bottlenecks. I realized that by mimicking certain natural structures, like the hexagonal pattern in beehives, we could optimize electron flow while minimizing energy loss." Throughout the rigorous judging process, Zion answered questions with clarity and depth that belied his age. The technical challenges he'd overcome, the late nights of problem-solving, and even Ms. Harlow's dismissal had all prepared him for this moment, had made him intimately familiar with every aspect of his innovation. Professor Jasmine Rivera, head of the judging committee, spent nearly 40 minutes at Zion's station, asking increasingly complex questions that probed not just his knowledge, but his understanding. By the end, her typically stoic expression had softened into something resembling admiration. "You've created something remarkable here, Mr. Carter," she said finally. "Something that could genuinely advance our renewable energy capabilities." The grand ballroom fell silent as Professor Rivera approached the podium for the awards announcement. Nia gripped her son's hand tightly as they waited among hundreds of anxious competitors and their families. "Before I announce our winners," Professor Rivera began, "I want to emphasize that this competition isn't merely about recognizing brilliant young scientists. It's about identifying innovations that have the potential to shape our future." She paused, surveying the room. "Our third-place award goes to Emily Nakamura from Seattle for her biodegradable plastic alternative." Applause filled the room as a beaming young woman approached the stage. "Our second-place award goes to the team from Phillips Academy for their AI-driven climate modeling system." More applause, more proud faces. "And our first-place award," Professor Rivera continued, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed ballroom, "goes to a young man who reimagined photovoltaic technology in a way that even established researchers hadn't considered. A breakthrough that could increase solar energy efficiency by nearly 40% while reducing production costs." Nia's grip tightened painfully on Zion's hand. "The National Young Innovators First-Place Award goes to Zion Carter from Westridge High School." The room erupted in applause as Zion made his way to the stage, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the cheers around him. As Professor Rivera handed him the crystal trophy and announced the $50,000 scholarship award, reality seemed to blur at the edges. "Would you like to say a few words?" Professor Rivera asked, gesturing to the microphone. Looking out at the sea of faces, Zion spotted his mother's tear-streaked face and Dr. Webb's proud smile. "This project was born from a belief that we can do better with our energy sources, with our planet, and with each other," Zion said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I want to thank my mother, who taught me that determination matters more than approval, and Dr. Webb, who showed me that true mentorship means believing in someone's potential even when others don't." The media coverage was immediate and extensive. Local news stations that had covered the Westridge Innovation Fair now scrambled to interview the national champion they had overlooked. University recruiters contacted Zion with pre-admission offers. A prominent tech company expressed interest in developing his technology further, with Zion maintaining patent rights. When Zion returned to Westridge, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Principal Frost organized a special assembly to recognize his achievement, carefully reframing the narrative as a school success story. Students who had never spoken to him before now approached with congratulations and questions. Ms. Harlow was notably absent. Following an internal investigation into the Innovation Fair judging and her pattern of discriminatory behavior, she had been placed on administrative leave. While the school avoided public statements about the situation, the student newspaper reported that she had accepted a position at a private research facility, far from the classroom. In her place stood a substitute teacher who greeted Zion with genuine respect when he entered the advanced science classroom. "We'll be learning about recent innovations in renewable energy today," the substitute announced. "And we're fortunate to have an award-winning expert right here among us." 1 year later, Zion stood at a podium in the newly renovated Westridge High School Science Wing, a facility largely funded by grants attracted by the school's now-famous alumnus. "Education should be about fostering potential, not limiting it," he told the assembled students and faculty. "When we allow prejudice to blind us to brilliance, we all lose." In the front row sat Principal Frost alongside Ms. Kemp, who had been promoted to Science Department Chair. Beside them was Dr. Webb, now running a special mentorship program connecting university resources with promising high school students throughout the district. And in the center of the audience sat Nia Carter, no longer working double shifts, having accepted a position as the school's community outreach coordinator, a role created to ensure all students received equal access to opportunities regardless of their background. As Zion cut the ribbon to the new laboratory facilities, he caught his mother's eye. The journey that had begun with a teacher's dismissal had transformed not just his life, but an entire community's understanding of what was possible when talent was recognized rather than rejected. The science project that was too ambitious hadn't just won national recognition. It had changed the very system that had tried to diminish it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Have you or someone you know ever faced discrimination? Drop a comment below and share your story. Subscribe for more powerful stories of triumph over prejudice, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.